Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Urban Legends video. Alright, another entry here based on one of your newer suggestions. This one having to do with the idea in urban legend that is still out there to this very day. Apparently it's been around for a couple of years at least, but there's still the notion that someone or some people could still be placing these things throughout multiple parts of the US. And what I loved about reading this information is that it almost took on a weird Willy Wonka type of world where it's finding this golden ticket, finding these tiles that are so beloved, and then once someone finds it, it becomes like almost a really exciting thing to share amongst all the other fans of this urban legend. And it's also tied to the fact that there's rumors and still mysterious, I guess, ideas about who created these or who is still creating them, because to this very day a lot of these things are unknown. It has to do with this. It's known as the Toynbee Tiles, which are looking at least one picture of, and then others are known as the Toynbee Tiles of New York City because of how many are found there. So let's go ahead, let's talk about all the information associated with this urban legend. So what are these Toynbee tiles? Well, essentially they are pieces of tile, and tile is probably the best way to describe it because essentially that's what it's made of, that are pressed into various parts of streets throughout who knows how many cities, because that's the whole thing. Like, these things are still being discovered to this very day. New York, though, seems to be the most common one that's there. Apparently there's about 130 of these tiles that have been documented, but it seems like the majority of them are still somewhere in New York City. Specifically, if you wanted to go down to like let's say a very in this case a very specific spot, it would be 36th Street and then up to 57th Street, wherever that is, they are in New York City. The whole idea of these tiles is this: somebody or some people, again, they're taking like phrases, words, terminology, ideas, and in some cases drawings, I guess the closest thing to drawings, placing them on these tiles and then purposely putting them on these streets. These streets could be well populated, well driven streets, or they could just be just random streets that are isolated somewhere just waiting to be discovered, or they have been discovered but people don't know exactly that these are the tiles. And the reason that they're called the Toynbee tiles is because a lot of them had those phrases within them. They state Toynbee. If you wonder what that's from, and I had no idea where that's from either, it's from a science fiction story from Ray Bradbury, the famous science fiction writer, and in it's he had a story that was called the Toynbee Convector. So whoever was doing this, it was at least familiar enough with Ray Bradbury, and then decided to just mix in that very distinct word Toynbee and within many of the messages. And then also the messages seem to do other stuff as well, like in terms of movie quotes. In some other cases there's phrases from other books, from other novels. It's just weird stuff. I mean, you're looking at some of the pictures associated with these tiles, you'll see that a lot of them don't really make too much sense. Some of them are so degraded, in fact, that it's kind of even hard to make out exactly what they're stating or what their original intention was. But that's the whole idea. Maybe it's just supposed to be just some vague thing that allows someone to start thinking, like as they come across this, they're in New York City just randomly walking around, in this case going to their job or going wherever, they see this, and so whoever did this was able to then, at least for a few moments, plant these weird ideas in their head. It's almost like I'm trying to remember what that term is, but there's some artists that do this to this very day. It's almost like living art, where you experience it rather than just see it, something along those lines. But yes, these tiles are found throughout multiple parts of the U.S., but New York, of course, being the most common one, but there's also Philadelphia, apparently. That's where a lot of the other tiles are found as well. The way that they're made up, though, is pretty interesting. Whoever does these today, or did them, because again, it's still pretty mysterious who did these. I'll talk about that in a minute. Whoever did these essentially took a tile, wrapped it around some tar paper, coated it, I guess, on one side when it comes to the glue, and then firmly pressed it on the street and then just left it as is. Because the whole notion after that is that any cars or people passing by would little by little tear away that tar. Either the car's tires would or the people's shoes would, and then as they did so, it would reveal more of the tile while at the same time firmly pressing it onto the street until finally, once everything is finished, then the tile is just completely there on the street, and then the entire tar paper is removed. So very hard to get off, in other words. It would not be something that weather would take away, not something involving cars. It would just simply stay there, not in pristine condition, but it would absolutely stay there for some time. Even to this day, even after decades of these tiles, some of them are still there. Others, though, have been damaged either by construction. It just happens, these things just get torn up whenever the whole street is being worked on. I would imagine that some of them are torn up by people themselves, collectors, people that are trying to obtain these tiles either for their own personal collection or selling them for others as well. Interestingly enough, as long as these tiles don't contain anything that's considered profanity wise or anything that's considered vulgar, then they can remain there on the street. Now I would imagine that it's not like you can just paint the whole street any which way you want as long as it's not vulgar or as long as it doesn't have profanity. No, but in this case, like New York City is probably thinking like, what are the costs involved removing this one piece compared to just leaving it there? And so that's why they've stayed and have been a success at staying at their location for so long. Now, as far as who has done these, it seems like the most popular notion is that there was one guy who apparently lived in Philadelphia. He was a social worker, a guy by the name of James Morosco, and the reason why a lot of people point to him is because back in the early 80s, throughout various newspapers in Philadelphia, he would write certain things like letters to them that included some of the same language found within these tiles. So again, these tiles, some of them don't seem to make any sense. They're almost like gibberish, just random words put together, I guess abstract wording, if you could call it that. And so a lot of that seemed to match what this guy did. But if it was him, interestingly enough, he never actually claimed credit for them, even when these things took on a little mini phenomenon of sorts. Now, in his case, he just decided, if it was him, like if it was truly him, he just decided to remain silent about it. But everything, in most cases, seems to point to him as being responsible for those tiles up until the point he died in 2003. Of course, there are new tiles that are still being found to this day, so that gives you the idea that others, if it really was him, James Morosco, others have taken on his work and decided to pass it along. So they are creating new ones even after his death. I think that's most likely the case too, because this Toynbee Tiles and the love that people have for it, once he passed away, and if it really was him, which I believe so as well, then others just simply took on his legacy and then decided to create their new ones as well. But that's it. That's pretty much all the info associated with these urban legends, this Toynbee Tiles. Anybody there in New York City? Anybody happen to have seen one of these or gone to purposely find them? There are still growing maps to this day of the spotted locations of these tiles. So if anyone has seen one of them, that'd be really good to hear, about what your experience is. I'd be interested to hear if they're truly like a tourist trap, like are people actually there taking pictures, or is it just niche thing, like are only a few people aware of these tiles, and then that's why they just remain there to this day. I think that's part of their success too. Not too many people know about these tiles. Otherwise people would be yanking them left and right. It's not like, let's say, that artist Banksy that creates these murals or artwork on the side of buildings. Like the minute someone knows about them, they're trying to claim it, and then that way they can keep it for themselves or sell it for a record price. So I think again that's why these tiles are a big success. And so if anyone knows about that, please post those comments below. I am going to be actually in New York City later this year, so if I happen to come across one of these, because again there are detailed maps of these tiles, I'll be glad to take a picture and then share that with everyone here. So, alright everybody, thanks again as always. Take care. Bye.